Hi, everyone who's watching. Thanks for joining us. We seem to be having a few technical issues, just a few. But like I learned this morning, so I've been in a retreat all day long. We just roll with the punches. We find what works and we just keep, we just keep evolving. I'm hoping that this is a very interesting conversation for us all. And I'm hoping that we can deal with
Hi.
Hi. I feel like hugging you right now. Okay,
Oh
so
my
you're
gosh.
in. Welcome. Good to see
Thank
you.
you. I'm so excited. This was a bit of a, I felt
That's there.
personality challenge.
That's there. Okay, so Patricia has gone out and she's trying to come back in.
Okay.
So we can start our conversation. You can hear, you can see.
Yes, yes, everything is fine.
Okay. Okay, so whoever is at the back end, Patricia is waiting for approval. Can you help her? Okay, so hi, Eniola.
Hi, Chinedu. How are you?
Okay, so whilst we wait for Patricia to come in, I was just thinking,
Mm-hmm.
well, let's just start. Let's have a conversation. Let's
Okay.
just.
Hey, God. All right.
Okay, so I don't know about you. What's your reaction to this topic?
So
The
at
first time
first,
I saw it, I thought, what kind of setup is this?
I'm not gonna lie, it was a bit challenging. I had to email Shola back, like, you need to tell me exactly what you mean. Because I
Okay,
wasn't
so
really, yeah, I wasn't really sure what like Shola wanted or like the panel wanted or the organizers wanted. But I was able to just eventually put my own perspective to things. Shola explained it better, and I was able to like, okay, I think I can work with this. I think that at first I read it as like, um, I saw it as like what are Nigerian Americans portraying Nigeria as, and I was like, I don't know, I've never really been worried about our portrayal in terms of like, let's say first gen, like me, for example. I'm like, we just we do the same thing Nigerians at home do, but I guess we're sometimes outdated with what we bring forth. So that was kind of my perspective at first. But yeah. How about you?
okay, so I mean, so at first I was all over the place. Because I'm like, okay, I mean, it's not like there's one narrative, Chimamanda's statement
Exactly.
about
Single
danger of
story,
a
yes.
single story. So I'm like, it's not like there's one single story. I have challenges with everything I see because I'm a natural
Right.
critic, right? So
Mm-hmm.
even if it's well done, so I love the Wakanda movie. However,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, you are lying now. Africa is not rising like this, So I have challenges with every story, regardless of who tells it. So I don't think there's one story. So I think
Yes.
that's what confused me a bit. But then
Right.
I thought that confusion also creates some space for conversation,
It does.
interesting conversations, and so
Yeah.
that's what I'm hoping will
Yeah.
happen.
That's actually a very
Um,
good point that you made. Yeah. I also considered, are they asking what white people think of us? Because me, I don't care about that. And I'm not, I was like, I'm going to make it clear. Even in my notes, I'm like, I'm not discussing what white people do. I just, but that's a good point. Patricia says
so
she's waiting for you.
yeah, and I'm trying to talk to Shola as well. Just a second. Let me just ask about it. We're sorry, Patricia. Someone will let you in shortly.
So
Sorry
Chinedum, are you
for
based in Nigeria?
yes, I am.
Okay. So
Lagos,
then,
Nigeria to be precise.
nice. So you can tell us what you think about us that don't live at home.
That's interesting because we think the story is only one way, but we're all Nigerians everywhere. Hi,
Yeah.
Patricia is trying to get in. She says she hasn't been granted approval. She has signed out and signed in again. So, all right. Thank you. Okay. All right. So I was just talking to Shola.
Okay.
And whilst we wait, we can just have that conversation. So what do we think? Sometimes I think you guys are traitors. How can you leave us to be in this heat alone? How? But a lot of times I also understand You know, everybody's at different stages in their lives.
Yeah.
I used to be in the UK myself. Um, I thought I hated it. I came back. Now I'm getting wanderlust again. So, you know, so there's not too much bad belly inside the matter.
Okay.
Okay, so
That's, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, you were speaking.
No, it's funny that you say there's not too much bad belly because I actually don't think there is as much bad belly between, let's say, homegrown versus those that maybe lived abroad and came back or are still very connected to home. I think there's a bigger gap. Like, you know how the topic was like the holes in our representation. To me, that the real hole is like for the people that are, you know, held out longer, for those that are like 10th generation American, even more, what we would now call African American. I think that's where the real gaps are. And that's the part that I've been interested in for a very long time. Yeah.
So you're talking about people who've lived outside of Nigeria, say for example, for a really long time, and then they
Yes.
don't connect really
Yes,
well.
they are no longer as connect. Yes, like Black Americans in that sense, they're not as, maybe they don't have the privilege or the opportunity or even like where exactly they're from. So for me, that was the part that, like Beyonce, like see how everybody was complaining about Black is King and all of that. And complaining that she was Wakandifying the culture, or they were claiming that she was. Anyway, I don't want to get too much into it because I know you sent me some of the questions and I know that we are going to talk about those things, but it's more of like those people. I think sometimes when we talk about this, we forget that. I think sometimes when homegrown Africans or continental Africans talk about it, we tend to forget that these people are distant relatives. We think they're just like any old Western person, but they're not. They actually are relatives. So that's kind of the perspective I'm coming with today.
Okay, so just out of curiosity, how long have you been away from Nigeria? When was the last time you were in Nigeria?
Last time I visited was, I was there in 2019.
Oh, that's not so long.
Yeah. You know what? I actually consider myself very Nigerian, but I understand that Nigerians do not see me that way, and that's fair. But I am very, like, my diets. I'm like, one of the things I'm famous for on Twitter is for being an Amala influencer. I would die for Amala, like, you know. Yeah, to me, Amala is better than any food ever created. Like, I prefer local dishes, but I see how Nigerians may not think I'm Nigerian enough, maybe because sometimes the way I speak or the way I present myself in certain ways or some of my ideas. But I think I would be someone you would call, I'm a real, like, in the middle person. Like, I'm very Nigerian. I'm also very Western. Is Patricia
Interesting. So how long have you officially been abroad?
Okay, I've lived here since 2003. So I've been here for a long time. Yeah. So more than half my life I've been here. Or half my life. Yeah. Actually more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Don't worry. Don't date yourself.
No, listen, I think my being here, like, is my experiences here as a Nigerian, they're very valid, and my experiences when I lived at home too are very valid, and when I visit now as a Nigerian, American, or Canadian too, is still valid. So I'm okay with that. I think I've made peace with that. The very first time that I went home, the first time I went home was just like 4 years after I left. And a driver called me a foreigner, and I lost my mind. Like, I completely, and I remember yelling, and I was supposed to be carrying stuff out of the trunk. I said, I'm not even touching it. How dare this man call me a foreigner? I was so angry. And my mom was like, how does this girl not see that she's now a foreigner? Like, she just, and I'm sure my mom thought that was money well spent for her. But I didn't understand how somebody would call me a foreigner in Nigeria. I felt very hurt by it the first time it happened, but now I understand. I don't face the daily Nigerian life, and yeah, I am in many ways too a foreigner.
Okay, so let's just get into the topic whilst we await Patricia's joining, because I'm aware the clock is ticking.
It is
You know,
ticking.
much as we don't want it to go, it is going. So, I mean, I pretty much asked this question, but just to give us context, you know, is this us? What does this mean to you?
Hmm. So you mean like what does the broad context of what we're discussing mean to me?
Yes. What does it
Okay.
mean to
I
you?
think for me, it's a very every time we get to talk about one factor of let's say Nigerians or Black people versus another, I always see it as an opportunity for us to bridge a gap. That's the first thing that always comes to my mind. So for me, this means it's very important to me because I do think that for a lot of the problems Nigeria is facing today, or for a lot of the problems that Black people outside of the continent are facing today, I feel like we're the missing pieces to the puzzle. So for a lot of what Nigeria is facing today, I think Black Americans are the missing pieces to the puzzle. I think that if we can bridge that gap with our distant relatives, and I think if we can make those connections again, I think if we can be invested in learning about each other, then I believe that we're going to see a lot of progress in the state that we're in right now. So for me, when you ask what does this mean to me, it's kind of personal. It's personal, and it's something that I have put a lot of thought and work into in terms of like my research and like where I'm going with my even as a person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess that pretty much just puts me up onto the next question as to, okay, so what are you currently doing to influence this conversation? What are you currently doing to learn more about, as you put it, your American brothers and sisters?
First of all, it's also made me learn about myself as a person. Like, okay, so I lived in the US. Right now I live in Canada, but I lived in the US for 7 years. Somewhere in between, like from between 2003 and today, I lived in the US for 7 years. And it really immersed me into like the experience of the Black person in America. And, you know, even times where I didn't know that I was experiencing it, I was like, you know, I was there thinking, oh, I'm Nigerian. No, I'm Black, right? In America. So in that sense, it pushed me to learn more about the Black American and like what Blackness really means, because that's not really something I considered as much. You know, I won't say prior to living in America, but I'll say prior to living in the West, I didn't really consider it. I have forgotten your question, so please can you ask it again?
I need your video on. That's the next question.
Oh,
Why
my
is
video
your
is
video
on.
not on? Can't see you.
How did that happen?
I don't know.
I don't understand this. Wow.
Hi, it seems
Technology.
Patricia is in. Patricia, are you finally in?
So people are saying they can see me though.
Oh, that's what I just saw.
Yeah, maybe it's the screen.
Okay, so I mean, let me adjust. Okay, I can only see myself. I can't seem to see anyone else. Can you see Patricia as well?
I can see. Let me check. Because I can show more. I can see show more. And yeah, people are saying no to Patricia. Just both of us. They can only see both of us.
Okay, fair enough.
Oh, I remember the question you asked now. You said, what was I doing? Yeah.
What were you doing? Yeah.
So, I mean, I said I learned. Oh, now Patricia, I can see her thing on the screen, but she's not showing yet. It's just her picture.
Yes, I can see her picture as well.
I can hear her.
Audio. I guess we'll just make do with that.
Hi, Patricia. Are you on?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you clearly. We can't see your face though.
Yeah, I can't see my face either, but I think it's better than when the both were gone.
Okay, I guess we will manage. You're welcome.
Thank you. My video is on, so I'm not sure.
Okay, not a problem. So I had just asked Eniola what she was doing. And then when she's done, I'm going to come back to you to just introduce your perspective to the subject matter. Okay, so Eniola, we're back to you.
Okay, so I was just saying that I've been fortunate enough to be immersed in the Black experience, and it pushed me to learn more. And by doing that, I've also been learning about myself as a Nigerian. I can't really say that growing up in Nigeria, I really knew who I was as a Nigerian. Like, I think, yes, I knew the day-to-day experience of a Nigerian, but I didn't know like the history of Nigeria. And last summer, this summer, feels like last year, but I took a course by Rerooting in Africa, by Unveiling Africa. It was called Rerooting in African History, and it like put into perspective like the Nigerian experience, I'll say like from pre-colonial times, and it really helped with my understanding of who I am in the big and of who we are. So that's kind of where I've been for a while now, just learning and learning and learning about Black people everywhere. That's what I've done.
Okay. So hi Patricia, sorry about all the challenges about getting online. But like we're told today, I mean, that's the new normal. We all have to get used to it. Suck it up. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Yeah, so what's your take on this subject matter? You know, if you can introduce yourself whilst you do that, that would be fine as well.
Right, so I've never lived in another country full time, at least not longer than a few months. And I studied in Nigeria and I've worked in Nigeria, although for international companies, which means I travel a lot and I spend a lot of time in other countries. But, you know, is this us? I look at it from what I do, by the way, I lead communications for a multinational across Africa. And I'm looking at it from that lens as what would I do? How would what view would I take of a company? And then using it to look at how do I see Nigeria? So I think that there's, or from what I see, there's a lot being said about Nigeria, some positive and some negative. Unfortunately, for people who are not directly involved with the country, it tends to be the negative they hear. It's weird because when you have a one-on-one conversation with anyone, they tend to have known a Nigerian and know quite a bit about Nigeria. They like the music, some like the film, some don't. But people tend to have a general impression that's positive about Nigerians when they've interacted. The main gap I would see is in the multiplicity of stories. So it's all out there, but just different weightings. And I would go further to say that it's up to every single one of us to put ourselves out there and portray ourselves for who we really are. And just like the argument of Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter, there's no need to show the negative side. There's so much of that happening. Where we need an intervention is in showing the positive side of Nigeria. I heard Eniola's comments earlier about looking at Wakanda and thinking, I mean, this is exaggerated. Yeah, it is exaggerated. Grossly exaggerated. Just like every other Marvel hero. Black Panther is exaggerated. Where I love that movie is the fact that for once we are being shown in an ideal way, in the same way that we see other cultures being represented. Now that's Africa. It's a different story for Africa and for Nigeria. For Africa, I see the narrative generally being told by whatever is happening at that point in time. So at some point it was like, and I'm not trying to date myself, but at some point it was USA for Africa and we are the world talking about starving children. At another point it's about schools. Now there are not that many coups anymore. Actually, there's hardly any coups anymore. We started talking about economic prosperity. Then some economists started failing. Then now everyone's confused about what to talk about. But for Nigeria, it's, you know, the first thing that brings for international audiences that haven't had any interaction is 419, fraud, sorts of things. I was watching Family Guy. I don't know if you guys watch Family Guy. I'm not recommending it, although I enjoy it. But I was watching Family Guy, this Seth MacFarlane animated thing. And they were talking about coming to Nigeria. Someone wrote a letter and defrauded this guy of a lot of money. And he was coming to Nigeria to come and, get his money back. And he had a really mean plan to, deal with those people that had taken his money. And when he came here, it turned out that they were actually using the money for a good cause. They were building schools and roads and those sorts of things. I was even more irritated because, first of all, coming to Nigeria, the way it was shown, it was mud huts and thatched roofs to start with. Not the Nigeria I know. Secondly, they tried to turn the story around to look like it was actually the fault of the West and not ours. Oh, how ridiculous. How totally ridiculous to make it that we actually need a road built or one school built. I know we do in certain places, but it just showed me how totally absurd the impression people who have had no interaction with Nigeria view Nigeria. So I'm rambling a little bit, but the bottom line is we need to tell those different stories about Nigeria and do it intentionally. So today, people have a view of Nigeria that's positive because they get to meet a Nigerian and they interact. Or maybe they follow Yvonne Orji, whom I love. Maybe they follow her social media pages and see her just being complete, showing Nigeria in all of what it is. And people like that. But we are not intentionally telling a consistent positive story that balances out all the negatives that are out there, because the negatives are true. We just need to balance it out by showing all the different sides of Nigeria. I'll just pause there.
Okay. A viewer has asked a very interesting question, and then I'm going to just ask you both. So why all this emphasis on a positive story? Why do we have to have a positive spin? Yes, so she says, or yeah, I'm assuming Rolake is female. So she says, why does there need to be an emphasis on showing the positive when there is so much wrong with the country? We continue to live under a facade and are more focused about representation from a global lens. Doesn't this distract us from tackling our issues head on? So Eniola, go.
Okay. So for me, I think that okay. So first of all, I think that the portrayal of Nigeria in the West, the negative portrayal, and everywhere has negative and positive portrayals, but in Nigeria, the negative outweighs the positive, and I think that is a factor of white supremacy. And I think that is a factor of that's a factor of white supremacy and the need to have the bad countries so that whatever countries want to be portrayed as like better are like considered better, right? And it doesn't mean that Nigeria is perfect by any chance. It's not. Nigeria is not perfect, but the fact that there's been so much negative media around Nigeria, I think that it's causing some people to push that narrative that it's not all bad. And there's also a trend I realize of the Africa they don't show you. I don't know if you guys have heard this term before, where they say, this is the Africa they don't show you. Then Nigerians that live abroad, or even the ones at home, they will now go to Banana Island, be flying drones there to prove to you that there's wealth as well. Me personally, not my cup of tea. I feel that the first of all, the metrics with which we measure success as Nigerians are still very colonial. Like, we still want to use the Western standard of development to gauge ourselves. So why do I have to prove that I have a mansion that we have mansions in Nigeria. Like for me, that doesn't signify like a country that people are happy to live in, like, or a country where there's a good standard of living. It's not mansions that prove that. And why do we have to prove that somebody in Banana Island or in Ikoyi drives a Ferrari? Like they're still driving it in potholes. So for me, those things are very superficial. I think that it's more important that we tell authentic stories, and it's more important that even if we tell aspirational stories like Black is King or like Black Panther, I'm actually very okay with it. Patricia, I know you thought it was me that said it was exaggerated. It wasn't me. I actually enjoy those things. I enjoy fantasy. I'm a creative person. I enjoy us using our imagination. But you know, I think that it still has to be founded in some sort of history, in some sort of truth. And I think that we also need to be self-aware as people, because even if it's not about the West presenting us in a light that we don't want, how do we present ourselves, right? If you watch the average Nollywood movie, I'm sorry, like it's just a shadow of what's going on in the West. Whatever is in the West is what we want to copy. You know, like our beliefs. Even if you just look at our beliefs, like our belief systems, well, it's completely overshadowed by what the white people brought to us. It's completely, like I'm talking of spiritual beliefs, by the way. It's completely overshadowed. You will see in Nollywood movies where something is doing them from the village, and all of a sudden they'll bring a pastor, and they always bring, when last did we see Shango defeat Jesus Christ? Those are the stories we need. You know, we can't keep like putting ourselves as the victims. We have to be victors, and that's why I actually enjoy stuff like Black is King. I enjoy stuff like you know, Wakanda, because I'm like, look, I know that there's a bit of mix up here with how this works, but it's aspirational. It's something that people can look forward to and say, wow, I've never seen myself in that way. I appreciate the positive representations, and but I do think that they must still, like, we must know about who we are, because again, if you ask the average Nigerian today to go and represent themselves, they're going to represent themselves as some form of a Westerner, by not even by knowing it, just by the virtue of the fact that we were colonized. And I feel like if we don't know who we are, whatever we produce is going to be inferior. Whatever we bring forth, whether it's in media representation or in the arts or in science, we're always going to be inferior. We're going to be number 2 at best. And if we don't create our own standards, then what does it even matter what's positive or negative? Because I don't even think the average Nigerian knows what a good life means from their perspective. They will always have it mixed up with what the West would approve, or it will still be influenced by the Western gaze. So for me, that's my should I say, my guiding sort of metric whenever I'm trying to create. When I think of what I want to create for myself as a Nigerian, as an African, as a Black person, I'm always very conscious about where those ideas of what's positive and negative coming from. Because I don't have a problem with mud houses. I would live in a mud house if the ventilation is great, if it's sanitary, if it looks good, if it's aesthetically pleasing, if it represents who I am. So I don't think those are the things we should be ashamed of. I think it's again, how do we feel about these things? Where do we know that these things come from? So that's my take.
Okay, Patricia, what's your take?
Right. So, Eniola, you said a lot of things, and I apologize for attributing something to you that didn't come from you, but you know,
it's okay.
I'm mixing things up as well. Right. So let's start by I see Rolake's question, and I don't think it's distracting us from our issues, trying to tell a positive story. I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Maybe.
Every country tells a positive story, and they may have a negative side to it. If you don't tell the positive story, all you have is negative. Negative stories don't help. So I work in the corporate world, and I see what negative stories do when it comes to investment in a country. For instance, we all want investment in Nigeria. So let me use a personal experience. I went to a leadership training program, and we had people from the US also come for a leadership training program. They were at a much higher level than we were, but they came to experience Africa and look at possibilities of investing in certain areas of their business. So the program for these people started with, they're going to a Maasai village in Tanzania or in Kenya, I can't remember which of them. They spent 2 days in this village in some huts and all of that. They saw the children, as usual. The African children came out and performed for them, and you know, these really cute, sweet things. And then they went to a church and heard someone playing the organ and singing some nice Christian African song. And then the next day we came together. We were doing a leadership program where we were exploring different things. I mean, we had some, part of our program included a spa, going to a spa and really being treated to some pretty nice things. And then we came together to talk about investments in Africa. And the people who spent time in the Maasai village said, I'm confused. When we presented all these things about the prospects for business, one of the people said, I'm confused. The children can't even buy shoes. Why do you think that the government can buy gas turbines in this country? Now, that is about a country investing. You have to show the whole thing. So even showing things like people driving Ferraris through potholes or Banana Island, they serve a purpose. They are authentic stories. Those things exist. They are no less authentic because they're frivolous. It just shows the full extent of the country. If I show that people in Nigeria drive Ferraris when people have already seen the potholes on the road, it makes them think we can invest or there's something going on here. People are investing every day, so that's investment, right? Now let's talk about when we go to other countries. If people don't see a balanced view of your country, they always think you're out to get. You know, I mean, you know the presidents who infamously said they'll never want to go back to their mud huts after they come here. You know, there are mud huts in Nigeria, but very few. We were colonized. We can't run away from that fact. A lot of things have changed since, you know, before colonization. I'm actually against that whole idea of having to go back to our roots, because the world is constantly evolving. Culture is constantly evolving. You have to meet yourself where you are. You need to understand your history, but I don't think we need to go back and have Shango defeat Jesus or whatever other fantasy thing that comes up. And I know that this is how a lot of people view this when they're outside of Nigeria. When you live in Nigeria, you come across these things. People do sacrifices to gods and all that sort of thing. Some people are seriously misled by doing all this stuff instead of facing reality and dealing with the day-to-day. So it's not as fantasized for me as it may be for people who live outside of Nigeria. And I'm not trying to attack a statement that you made. I'm just showing from where I sit in Lagos, Nigeria. You know, it's just very different things. And no matter what, the first time I went to New York, I was stunned at how many homeless people were on the street. I was stunned at just how dirty certain parts were. And I didn't even go, you know, outside of Midtown Manhattan. And nobody thought of telling that story. They just flooded us with I love New York t-shirts and, you know, the skyline views and all of that. You can find out for yourself any gritty bits. Until Trump, we never thought, actually until George Floyd, we never knew how deep racism was in America. At least I didn't. It's good that we can see it, but we don't have to be greeted by it before America can solve its racism issues. A country can still prosper for what it has while dealing with its own issues. We need to deal with our issues, and that's a totally different topic. But we can't keep having a negative story or think that telling positive stories detracts or distracts us from facing our issues. Frankly, we are not even telling the positive story. So, you know, nobody has an excuse for not dealing with the issues in the country. Let me pause.
Okay, so thank you very much, Patricia. Thank you, Eniola. You know, there's something you said, Patricia, that really struck me. I do remember my very first visit to America. My first thought was, is this all? As in, really, is this all? Because truly, we have been so, what's the word, bombarded with images of America being almost like heaven. And so I don't know about you, but I was very disappointed because I thought there should be more, you know. So I guess when you put that, you know, when you put that lens on Nigeria, really we don't have that kind of positive spin. But for me, I think it's a little more than just what happens on screens or in our stories. I think it's the way we speak of each other and, you know, talk to each other. So let me, a simple, I mean, so this is a consistent peeve of mine, right? There's almost no Nigerian who speaks well of leaders, any leader, you know. So if you just call the name Buhari right now, people can pretty much just cut off your head, right? Now they do this in front of any and everybody, their children, whatever. However, if they were to be brought face to face with Boo Boo, they would be practically groveling. So, you know, for me, I know that I know that this is about the stories we tell, but I think that it starts also with how we treat ourselves. You know, so someone this week had put up a post around how when it comes to employees just, you know, just rant and rant, but it's not like we're the best of employees either. You know, so I'd like your perspective on how we talk to each other and talk of each other. What do you think about that?
So I think that the Nigerian people, I'm going to, because you brought up Nigerian leaders, I'm going to make a distinction. I think that the people are different from the leaders. And I think that people have every reason to be distrusting and dissatisfied with the governance that we have. I think that Nigeria's issues
and disrespectful.
Yeah, absolutely. We have every reason to be. If you open fire on a bunch of people, like, you deserve whatever comes to you. And I think that who are peacefully protesting, you definitely deserve whatever comes to you. I don't think disrespect is Nigerians. What's disrespect going to do to the leaders? You're going to say, this person is an Oloshi, and then what? It doesn't affect them. But guess what they can do to you? They can take the money that's meant to build your hospital. And I saw a video yesterday of women in Luz that have just given birth. They put them in the corridor. They put cardboard on the floor. These are women that have just pushed whole human beings out of their bodies, or they've been cut open to get out a human being. And they put them on cardboard. They were sleeping in the corridor, outside. It wasn't like, even inside would be bad, but this was outside. The woman that was recording it said she had spent millions in the past week trying to, like, with delivering her baby, or about $1 million or something like that, and or over $1 million. I don't remember the amount specifically. Don't quote me on that. But she said that, like, this is her situation now. She has to be look at the nursing mothers, new mothers, and it was very, like, I could not believe what I was seeing. So if I call a Nigerian leader a fool or a devil, I say it will be better for them or God punish them. I don't think that has any bearing whatsoever on their lives. Whether I say it on Twitter or I say it on CNN, it has no bearing on their lives compared to what they can do to me. So essentially, the power dynamic is so different that I don't think that Nigerians should be hiding the fact that Nigeria is a failed state. I don't think that we should be, trying not to discuss it. And again, this also goes back to what I was saying about knowing who we are. And I'm also going to sort of touch on some things that Patricia had said. Knowing who we are as people is, you cannot know who you are if you don't know where you've come from. And that's why our history is extremely important. Saying that it's in the past and we need to catch up. What are you catching up with if you don't know what you're supposed to be catching up with? Nigerians are trying to catch up. And by the way, I don't have any problem with people showing their Ferraris. If you show your Ferrari, that's fine. But it is not even representative of 0.1% of the country. So if you're trying to, again, it depends on your intention. I can have a Ferrari tomorrow and I'll be putting on my Insta stories and I'll be driving it in Lagos. That doesn't mean that I'm trying to necessarily change any perception or anything, but it's out there and people can see it and say, oh, in Lagos, people are living it up. But at the same time, if I'm putting it out there because I want to prove a point that they're investors, you were talking about investors, okay, let the investors come, and then you see that there is no money in Nigeria because the systemic failure is from the top all the way to the bottom. So if you like put 100 Ferraris to prove a point, when the investors come in, I've heard of like different, there's a known American like top designer, I mean like high fashion, that sells $30,000 purses, that came to Nigeria to see the terrain and see if he could open his store because of all the noise he heard. He changed his mind. There's no money there. And yeah, for me, I always come back to, if we, the people, know who we are, and we know what we stand for, what we speak up for, and we come to our authentic selves as a group. Like, I just don't see how that's going to fail us. And that's why I keep coming back to this point of decolonizing. Catching up with the rest of the world doesn't mean losing who we are. And I think that there's a major loss in the Nigerian identity because we think that who we are is just the product of colonization. So we're just stuck with it and we think it's fine to just keep going that way. We've not asked ourselves the real questions. What are the problems that we take upon ourselves today? Look at Nigeria is killing queer people, criminalizing them. What do we know about who we were before the British came and the Portuguese? What was the situation with queer people? Were women not marrying women in Nigeria? So again, we keep saying these things as if, oh, they're just from the past, just catch up with whatever is going on. To me, that's an identity crisis. I think that what's important is us really, again, going back to who we are. It doesn't mean that we must live it the exact same way that it was lived. After all, our ancestors made mistakes. It's up to us to correct that, improve on that, but I don't think that we can move forward if we don't know where we're coming from.
Patricia?
Great points, Adriana. So, from my perspective, it's not about not knowing who we are, it's knowing who we are today. Whether we were colonized or not, what we were would never be what we are today. Things evolve, cultures evolve, peoples evolve. Nothing stays the same. Okay, so this is not about saying let's not know our history. We've got to know our history. We need to know where we came from. But we can't pretend that reality isn't reality, that where we are today is not where we are today. And there's a lot we have going for us. Now, when you talk about investments, and this isn't even a topic about investment, Nigeria is not everything. We're not trying to pretend the country is in a very bad state, okay? I'm talking about showing the country in its true light. So I don't expect a high-value designer to invest in Nigeria. The per capita GDP is way too low to imagine that because one little percentage of people have money, they can sustain the business of a fashion designer. Nigerians can travel and buy their stuff elsewhere. However, when you have over 170 million people, there's such a huge market for a ton of things. When you have a huge under 25 population, it's a huge market for practically everything from diapers to feminine hygiene products to soft drinks to detergents, practically everything. So that's what I'm talking about. So, and maybe we should even use that to illustrate. It's not a good place for certain types of investment. However, it's a huge market for practically anything you want to sell to a large number of people. And that's where the attraction is. And there is money in Nigeria. It's interesting because every day, and I work for a multinational company, a great multinational company, so I'm not talking about my company, but every day I hear about investments, how some investments went wrong, how there may not be any money. But the big Nigerian companies, and by the way, I'm distinguishing because I'm not saying it works well for everyone. It's a shame what startups have to go through in Nigeria. But they're huge Nigerian companies that are making tons of money. So you can't tell me there's no money in the country. It's just not allocated in a nearly reasonable way. That's what it is. And I promised I wasn't going to come in here and get into a big political debate. But we have to say,
right.
Right. There's
Yeah.
but there's a ton that keeps up. Like, I live in Nigeria. My current job was supposed to be based in another country. And for me, I didn't want to move at the time, although I may consider moving now. But I didn't want to move. And I had to ask myself at some point, why do I like living in this country? I complain about this, I complain about that. And it tells me, and when I look at it, I see what I like. And I see people who come from other countries, people who come from the United States, from Europe, to work in Nigeria and think, oh, this is going to be a 2-year assignment and it'll help me up my CV and get a job back in Europe. And they end up staying here. There's a lot to love. We're not even trying to pretend that this is an ideal place. It's not, there's too much going wrong. But we have to tell both stories.
Right.
We can't be fixated on everything that's going
Right.
wrong and forget what's going right. Especially because, I mean, look at the influence of Nigerian music. Let's use music, for instance. I don't agree with a lot of the lyrics. In fact, there's some songs I listened to recently that I love, but I just can't sing along to. Beautiful music. There's just too much of an influence that whenever we try to show ourselves in that positive light or show the positive things that are happening, despite everything else that's going on, the level of influence we have just shows you how much we have to offer. What if we were doing this intentionally?
Right.
Okay, so
I can continue.
No, but Patricia, you didn't answer the question with regards to how we speak to ourselves and of our leaders. I'd really like to hear you on that. I don't know if you deliberately sidetracked the question.
First of all, people generally, people say what they experience. Okay, I'm not an activist, but I can't say something positive if my experience is not positive. People will talk about even good leaders. People say negative things even about good leaders, frankly, people that you admire. In their countries, people see negative things and talk about it. That's the cross you bear when you are a leader. And then, when it's difficult to find a positive thing to say, it becomes even harder. I'm never going to think that Nigerians talk too negatively about their leaders, because I don't know a single country that I didn't come across people talking negatively about their leaders. It's, that's what it is. That's why one political party wins over the other. That's why, as a matter of fact, that's the beauty of democracy. You can have someone in a place for 4 years, and criticize what they do, and someone else can come and right that wrong. But you criticize again what wrongs need to be done right. Put somebody else there. That's the beauty of democracy. People don't think the same way about the same person. Some people want to elect one leader and some want to elect the other. And just by human nature, some would like a leader and some wouldn't. And the fact that people are enamored when they meet a leader that they've been bashing their lives only has to do with the celebrity factor. It doesn't mean they suddenly think the person is a fantastic leader. They're just in awe of meeting someone who has such power. At least that's, most of the time. It's difficult for me to see someone just change their view completely because they saw the person on a plane. I've flown with leaders that I've criticized in the past. Well, criticized amongst my family and friends because I don't do any activist work, but I've flown on a plane with them and I've taken a picture and sent it to my family and said, hey, guess who I was flying with? Doesn't mean that I've changed my view about who. I don't think that I don't think we bash our leaders or ourselves any more than other people do. And I want to find the Nigerian who talks negatively about things that they actually like. I think we talk negatively about things that we don't like, and that's normal.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're slowly coming to the end of the session. I've had an interesting conversation. A few things still on my list on Ask, so I'm just going to rush through, and I'd hope you just give me, sound bites. Okay, so are we responsible for how we are perceived abroad?
So here's my thing. I would say no, because I think that Nigerians are I think that Nigerians already represent themselves the way that human beings represent themselves. So they're good people, they're bad people. And if I would even go as far as to say that there are the number of Nigerians doing positive things or not doing anything problematic to affect the system or whatever, wherever they go, I think that it outnumbers the ones that are committing the crimes and etc. But I feel that the fact that exists, but the reputation that we have is still negative. I think that's not our problem. I think that's a problem of the person that wants to hold the stereotypes. There's no amount of, I truly believe that if someone, if first of all, Nigerians don't even realize that they're dealing with racial bias in the international community. Nigerians think that everything that we've done is our fault. So it's the 419ers ruining our reputation. Why is I don't know, like, why are the people mass shooting kids in schools in America? Why are they not ruining the American reputation? Why does everyone still speak so highly of America? Why is the deep racism from Europe, all these European countries, even the ones we love, why are Nigerians still running to Belgium when they're still giving King Leopold award? King Leopold that was decapitating and maiming people for not meeting slave work quota. So I just think that, again, it was that saying that the hunter is the victim,
Continues to tell the stories. He will always be, always be the hero.
So I think that right now a lot of things are rigged against us, and we don't even realize it. We think it's our fault because we're scamming. And look at the impact that has had on even our policing system, whereby we went in a perpetual state of panic over 419 because we thought it was giving us a bad reputation. And I don't know if you guys saw Kiki Mordy's article about how the Nigerian prince stereotype caused a police brutality problem in Nigeria, to the point that we're always carrying this burden of how do we look, how do we appear, and I think Nigerians need to divest from respectability politics. Nigerians just need to, again, learn what they need to learn, get involved in like whatever communities they're moving to, become invested in other Black people, collaborate with them and stop worrying about what white people think of you, because white people are never going to think that you're amazing or you're great. Even me with today, they'll still ask me, why do you still speak good English? Why do you speak good English? Oh, it must be because you've been here for a long time. I'm like, no. Unfortunately, I was colonized, and that's why I speak English. But you're not going to sit here and tell me that I speak good English because I've been around Western people. So again, I don't think we're responsible for it. I think we're responsible for how we behave, but we're not responsible for how people see us.
Patricia.
Okay, so I can make the same points Eniola made, but I'll come with a different conclusion. I absolutely think we're responsible for how people see us. I think the reason that we want to go to Belgium, even though King Leopold did all these awful things, is because Belgium has managed to sell themselves as a different kind of place. I think fewer Nigerians would want to go to America today than they would have before because of all they've seen about racial discrimination. Personally, it makes America far less attractive to me. I have nothing to gain in going to America, right? So we're responsible for telling our story. And I don't think we should ignore that fact. I think we should actively tell a positive story about Nigeria. That's the only way perceptions are created. I know that they don't happen by chance. Companies are not perceived as good if they don't go out to tell positive stories. Countries are not perceived as good if they don't go out to tell positive stories. Human beings are not perceived as good if people don't see what they're doing that's good. Perceptions are created by actions, and we can take actions to create positive perceptions about our country. And I absolutely believe it's our responsibility.
Wow. So I didn't expect that angle, Patricia. So so I'm going to have to ask you to dig a bit. So if you were our information minister for the next 4 years, what would your plan be? What kind of stories would you be telling?
The right word. Because information implies objectivity. And I'm not even talking about being objective. I'm talking about going outright to sell a brand.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that role in our ministerial portfolio is given to the information minister. So that's the role I'm giving you now. So just take it. What would you do?
I just feel a bit strongly about that whole thing, but let me ignore that. And look at this. We need to tell a positive story about our country. We need to build the brand for what it is. There are negative things, and we don't need to tell the negative stories. It's obvious for others to see. We need to push our positive stories because that's where there's a gap. I would want to look at whatever is good in terms of investment, whatever is good in terms of arts. We need to have people actively showing these things. I have my niece went on a hike the other day, and they did this whole long hike somewhere in Abuja, and then had a party, and then hiked back, and she showed pictures of the beautiful scenes. And all I could think was, if this was another country, and I'm not here, that this is not me bashing Nigeria, but if this was another country, they will make a big deal out of this thing, but we just ignore it. There's a ton that's good about Nigeria. It's not just about telling that story, it's also about investing in those positive things to make them even better. But in the absence of that investment, I would look for what exists that's positive and tell that story. And if you mean more specific, it's, you're talking about a blueprint here that I haven't started to write, but a huge ambition that I have somewhere in my head if I ever find the time.
Okay, I'm going to come to you on that after this. But I mean, so as you spoke, what I saw was actually a combination. So something as simple, so I think in pictures. So something as simple as children's books, things like, tourism, materials, beautiful pictures of beautiful spaces, maybe, what's the word? Some kind of movies that, have an agenda, and it's, shifting that agenda consistently. But, it takes a lot to do these things. Number one, it takes passion, it takes commitment, and then it takes money. So Nigeria, where would all this be coming from, Eniola?
That's a very good question. No, it's true. It's a great question. Again, this is where it comes back to the systemic failures of Nigeria and how even sometimes we might have great intentions, but they don't come through. Nigeria is a poor country. And, I know somebody who's a movie director and was sort of breaking down why Nigerian movies don't make box office numbers. We don't have cinema culture because the country is a poor country. So if a movie director goes to spend 300 million naira, which is pretty big in Nigeria, which is peanuts compared to the budget here, but Nigeria is pretty big. Let's say you don't even do anything sci-fi, you're just telling a really good drama story. You may not recoup that 300 million in the movie theaters because there's no money. So very good question. Where do we get the money from? This is where I say that we have to start collaborating with our relatives outside of the country. We need to start telling stories that are interconnected. We need to start working with them. They have certain access that we don't have. And we have access to the culture. We're rooted at home. So we have that access that's valuable to them. And that's why I really believe in that Black collaboration, and I believe in decolonization. So telling stories that are true to us, not just, what's the most updated version of what the master taught me.
Patricia.
Right.
I think Eniola is a bit of an activist, and I'm dodging the activist scene today.
I'm looking at a comment by Olumide Bolo and seriously want to touch on that. He says that the biggest gap is Nigerians not knowing themselves outside of whiteness. We can spend 100 years of rebranding and our oppressors still want to hold unfavorable views of us. So I agree with you that maybe who you call our oppressors want to hold unfavorable views, but I don't think that they believe all of those things they say themselves. Otherwise, and I don't mean everyone, I think that they will want to continue telling that negative story about us. However, you will find a person who's telling that negative story when it comes down to individuals, because at the end of the day, a group of people will come down to single individuals. You will find someone who says nasty things about Nigeria, comes into Nigeria, because I've seen it a lot, comes into Nigeria, lives here, continues to talk down about Nigerians, but wants to live here for the next 20 years. When they post this person to another country, they don't want to go, they want to live in Nigeria. So can you tell me, really, honestly, that they don't see some good things about Nigeria? I know that a lot of expats in Nigeria want to stay because they like being treated like a king. That's different.
Exactly.
But I'm talking about people who actually enjoy being in Nigeria. And then I'm not talking about just our, I'm not talking about white and black here. There's a whole world out there that has a negative impression of Nigeria. It's not just white people, So, and this is why we need to tell the positive stories, because not everyone wants to hold an unfavorable view of Nigeria. Unfortunately, a lot of people who want to know more and have no bias whatsoever are not exposed to positive stories. So I'm talking of, and Eniola has a much richer and a much deeper experience living in Canada and the US. I'm talking about, for instance, African Americans who want to know more about Africa. I don't think the average African American wants to hold an unfavorable view. I think a lot honestly just want to know more. But not everyone can travel to Nigeria or have a close Nigerian friend. So not having those positive stories leaping out at them puts us at a disadvantage. And I like what Eniola was saying about working with our brothers and our sisters and doing things that move the country forward and showing them the positive helps. Nobody wants to work on a hopeless situation, but when you see what is being done despite the situation we find ourselves, it gives you hope for what more can be done. It is a poor country. People need to eat before they start considering watching movies. And in Nigeria, it's not just about eating. They also need electricity. You need to buy petrol for your small generator. And fresh water to have a bath before you start thinking about watching a movie in the cinema when you can buy a bootleg DVD. So it's a very different thing. There is poverty, but there are positive stories out there that can be told.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so we've run through our time so quickly, but I just want to give us like one minute to just summarize.
Okay.
But Patricia, when you were talking about expatriates wanting to stay, I used to work in a multinational, and yes, it is true that expatriates like to stay in Nigeria, but it's a combination of factors. Much as we say Lagos is expensive, it is cheaper when you exchange your dollar, you're paid in dollars and you live in Nigeria. No, you can't compare. No, number two, Nigerians, expatriates live on another level here, on another level that they don't live at when they live in their own country. Exactly. So clearly, there are opportunities, but just one thought, and then so when you think about your ending, just put it through. I was talking to a former colleague who worked at this place I used to work, and he was giving me feedback about how they were shutting down locations in Nigeria because Nigeria had been degraded and they had moved offices to, of all countries, Ivory Coast. And I thought, wow, I didn't realize Nigeria was in this bad of a problem. Ivory Coast, for heaven's sake. Anyway, and so he was explaining to me how insurance costs are very high because of the security issues and all that and all that and all that. So how do you tell positive stories around all these goings-ons? And then how do you stay positive as well in the middle of all of it? So I'll go with Patricia first because she's in the heat with me, and then and then we'll finish up with Eniola, who is enjoying winter breeze.
At every point in time, right, there's background noise and then there's what you focus on. And we all can choose what to focus on. And sometimes the background noise is overwhelming because there's very little that you can pick out of it and pay attention to. It's like, for instance, I'm talking here, before we started the session, there's some construction going on somewhere near my home, and there was this noise in the background that I was worried about. It's not happening now, but I didn't even notice it until I was about to join the session. So I wasn't focusing on that, I was focusing on other things. So we can still choose what to focus our attention on. There's a lot that we can change. There's a lot that we can advocate to be changed, even if it's not in our direct control. There's some things that are totally beyond our control. And I would repeat something I said earlier, that for sure we can talk and chew gum at the same time. While advocating to change the things that we can speak up against and changing the things that we can change, we can also let go of the things that are completely not in our control. Everybody can be focused on the same things. I know that we are in the, we're roughing it out here. We're in the thick of it. But there's still things to be positive about. And by the way, the comments about the expats, this is not just expats that have privilege. I'm talking about even people that come from other African countries and people that come from the US as well. And their jobs run out and they choose to stay without those privileges that they had before. I mean, obviously, it's still a bit of a different lifestyle. But Nigerians are generally likable people. Lagos culture, some people really get into Lagos culture, even in a way deeper than I would personally, even though I live in Lagos. There are things to love. There are people to interact with. There are gems in the middle of all that's going on. And you could either choose to focus on those things and portray them and be positive yourself and portray positive things, or you can focus on the negative. But both stories need to be told. We absolutely can't ignore all the ills. Otherwise, nothing's ever going to change. But we need to also look at those positives, focus on them and drive them. And I'm not even sure if I answered it.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't hear that last part.
I'm not even sure if I answered your question.
In a roundabout kind of way. So Eniola, back to you. Final. Did you get a chance to give yourself final words?
Who, me?
I don't know. We'll keep going.
No, Patricia.
Don't ask me for final words. I'll just keep going. But yeah, okay. No, let me say,
Eniola,
final word is,
okay.
Well, there's a lot of bad and there's a lot of good. But we can't ignore the good because we are focusing on the bad. Things need to change, but there's still a lot positive that we can tell and make ourselves more attractive to people. We shouldn't throw the baby with the bathwater. Let's tell those positive stories, and I believe it's absolutely our responsibility to do that.
Thank you. And
so, sorry, remind me again. We're giving last words, and that's it.
You're giving last words, and then you're talking about how the impact of all the things going on wrongly. How do we tell good stories in the middle of all?
Okay, so for me, I think that what telling a good story looks like, I've said this already, but I'll just reiterate, is about authenticity. Because as we've all admitted, Nigeria has the range of experiences. There's the positive, there's negative, there's the wealthier, there's even just the people that love Nigeria for jollof rice, right? So Nigeria has such a rich, like, we're people after all. So we have so many rich experiences, whether it's our cuisine or music, or there's just too many ways to experience Nigeria. So in that sense, I would say that no matter what we're doing, I think that two things. If when we're creating these experiences or stories, we're creating it with us in mind. Because even now that we're talking, I've noticed that because we're talking about portrayal, I think we're so concerned about the Western gaze. I think we need to zero in and come back to us. And this is where I truly believe in this. If we can, in the creative process, if we say, who are we creating for? And we say we're creating for ourselves. So if I'm a designer, I'm a fashion designer, textile designer as well. If I'm going to design something, and at the back of my mind, I have it that I want the average Nigerian to see this and be proud of it, I think I'm doing something right. If I'm creating a movie and I want the person who lives in Nigeria to resonate with it, and I want, they've cut us off. Hello?
Are you for real?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you guys.
Okay, let me just quickly finish my point. But they've already put like a pop-up, like, thanks for attending. Yeah. But let me just say it, even though I can't access the screen anymore. But I'm just trying to say that once we can we can center ourselves in the creative process. So even if our distant relatives in the diaspora are the ones creating it, once we can center ourselves as the consumers and in the creative process, I think that we'll be creating something great for ourselves. And we should stop worrying about the Western gaze. They're going to think what they think. I think that by the time we produce so much from a place of authenticity, there'll be a range for people to choose from. You can engage in orishas if that's what you like. You can engage in just enjoyment. Nigerians love enjoyment. That's one thing we're good at. You can engage in the enjoyment Nigeria, or you can engage in the Nigeria that is very serious about the issue. So I think, for me, there's I think creative freedom and remembering that we're doing it for us and by us. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. I feel like I know you both already. Yes, there's a danger in a single story. There are many Nigerias, many Lagoses. Let's tell authentic stories. Let's take responsibility for the stories. No, we're not writing for the Westerner, or even just for ourselves, because everybody's going to have access to our stories. So I guess let's take responsibility for the stories that are told. And interestingly, each day we're telling a story with our lives. So let's tell beautiful stories. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thanks to
Bye.
Nice meeting you both.
Interestingly, Patricia, I've met you before.
Oh, wow. You do look
really, yeah.
Sure.
I met you at I think it was a Sherry Blair event.
Could be. Well, let's connect. I'd really like to stay in touch with both of you. It was a real pleasure.
Same here. You guys.
Thank you. Same here.
I'm active on Twitter, but you have my email.
All right, take care.
Oh, you're not active on your email? How?
All right, take care.
Okay.
All right, take care, everyone. Have a good evening and have a fantastic weekend. Bye.
Bye-bye.